hashtag that translates as hashtag lockdown or die was trending on the social media, while human rights groups and medical personnel and also joined calls for the rapid actions. And therefore, doctors, politicians, and also human rights commissioners are calling on Indonesia's government to enact tighter movement restrictions as the death toll for the COVID-19 rose in Indonesia. But there are actually many methods of lockdowns followed by different guidelines or so-called legal basis. So let's see what are actually the methods through the next graphic. Here it is. Types of lockdowns that maybe government will consider to take these three lockdowns. First of all, we can see the two biggest legal standing in here. We can see the law number 6 of 2018, which is about the health quarantine. And then the second legal basis in here is the government regulations in lieu of law number 23 in 1959 about the civil emergency. So as can we see that the law number 6 about health quarantine will bear about the zone quarantine. And then in here, we can see actually this is not the large-scale social restrictions, but rather than the civil emergency. But while in the visions of law number 6 and law number 23, we can see large-scale social restrictions in here. And at the first zone of quarantine maybe seems to be visible to do, as regional areas across Indonesia have been scrambling to close their borders to stop an exodus of informal workers from the capital city, Jakarta, as the epicenter of the COVID-19 outbreak in the country. And therefore, through the next graphic, I would like to explain you what is actually this zone quarantine about. So we can see through the next graphic, here it is, the zone quarantine, as in the law number 6 in 2018 about the health quarantine. First of all, in the article number 54 and the number 3, we can see the restricting quarantine citizens to enter certain regions. And the second one from the article number 54.2, we can see that this law is activating Indonesians' policy to guard the quarantine zones. And then the third one, we can see from the article 55 and number 1 that the government is responsible to fulfill the needs of quarantined citizens, including the animal foods. While in here, in the article 55 about the funds, maybe the current obstacles that the government have to deal with this. And then the fourth one is the article number 55, number 2, that is the main actor are the central government and related regional government. And according to the law, the authority to issue a quarantine falls within the remit of the central government. And indeed, Indonesia's finance minister has said that although funds have been prepared, there will be tremendous manpower challenges in delivering essential supplies in the residents in the zone quarantine. And additionally, the social impact of the epidemic has tended to fall hardest on the certain groups, especially the minorities. In result, the government has yet to impose a quarantine to support regional administrators in handling the outbreak. But instead, President Joko Widodo said after a meeting on Monday that the government should pursue a policy that's so-called large-scale social restrictions and also stricter physical distancing policies. So we can see in the next graphic, the large-scale social restrictions, as it lies in the government regulations number 21 in 2020. So basically, large-scale social restrictions is limiting certain activities of residents and the areas suspected of being infected with COVID-19 as to prevent the possibility of the spreading COVID-19. First of all, we can see through the graphic, this law is restraining of the school and also workplace, and restrain the school and workplace, and also restrictions on activate in public places or facilities, and also the religious activities that conclude a mass society to involve within. And Indonesians, President Joko Widodo on Thursday, which was in March 31st, declared the country to be in a state of public health emergency while signing a government regulations that would pave the way for the cities and provinces to impose large-scale social restrictions to curb the spread of COVID-19. And National Disaster Mitigations Agency, which is Doni Monado as the head, is also Indonesia's COVID COVID-19 task. After the meeting, said that the policies refer to 3 existing pieces of regulations. So let's see what are actually the legal standings of the new regulations through the next graphic. Here it is. We can see this large-scale social restrictions legal standings that the government regulations number 21/2020 that just paired is based on 3 legal standings. First of all, the Disaster Management Law number 24 of 2007. And then the second legal standing in here is the Health Quarantine Law that I've mentioned before, which is the number 6 of 2018. And the third legal standing is that Civil Emergency on Government Regulations in lieu law number 23 in 1959. That these 3 legal standings bear up a Government Regulations 21 number 21 in 2020. And under the new regulations, President Joko Widodo has pledged to ensure that the pharmacies and stores that selling basic necessities would still remain open. And also health workers, police, and also military personnel, as well as public officials, will be allowed to move around freely. And the presidential spokesman, Fajar Wayong, also said that the government would impose extreme physical distancing measures by declaring a civil emergency. What is actually the civil emergency? Let's see. It's through the next graphic in here. Civil emergency, which has the legal standing on the government regulations in lieu law number 23 in 1959. First of all, civil emergency in here, restrictions on the meetings without government officials' permissions. And the second one, restrictions on people outside their houses. And the third one, we can see the limitations on entering buildings, residences as well, and public facilities, and also any open spaces. And the last one is officials have legitimations to check bodies and clothes of the suspected persons, including the policies itself. So this civil emergency is more stricter than other social distancing measures as well. And in a sense, a civil emergency is the conditions where the government could no longer work and has to be reinstated. And the funny thing is, the presidential spokesman, Fajar Wayong, that I mentioned before, also said that the government would impose extreme physical distancing measures by declaring these civil emergency only. He wrote on his official Twitter account that President Jokowi will set a new stage of large-scale social restrictions through declaring a civil emergency. But no longer after that, he tweeted that the statements received so many responses and become very controversial. But however, the tweet was soon to be deleted and replaced with a tweet that's stating that the large-scale social restrictions will be coupled with a health quarantine policies instead. And as we know that COVID-19 is a real threat, and it is a real threat to everyone in this planet. So stay safe, everyone, and stay tuned to some market headlines.